The Great Ruler Episode 122 Explanation. The instant Mu Chen opened his eyes, crystal clear flames seemed to be blazing within his pitch-black pupils, giving a pure and clear look from his pupils. Ha! A lump of breath faintly containing a high temperature was slowly exiting Mu Chen's mouth. The high temperature even made the space around him show small signs of distortion, as if a charred smell was released as well. I've finally succeeded. The flames in Mu Chen's pupils quickly retreated as he returned to normal. His tightly tautened body loosened up as if he was relieved of a burden, as he felt the intense burning pain from his spirit also dissipating. He had already succeeded his spirit disaster. Congratulations! An idle voice rang out from his rear. Turning his head back, Mu Chen saw a charming face with a jade-like hand supporting it on the stone stairs, staring at him with a full smile. Mu Chen was slightly startled when he saw Wen Qingxian. However, he quickly recovered from his shock as he understood the reason why she was there. Thanks. When he was submerged in his cultivation, Wen Qingxian must have been by his side, guarding him. Wen Qingxian waved her jade-like hands as her phoenix-like eyes glanced at Mu Chen. How's the feeling of spirit disaster? Mu Chen slowly clenched his fist as he smiled. Very powerful. He could feel the powerful surges of spiritual energy in his body. Compared to before he underwent the spirit disaster, it was definitely much more powerful. Earlier, when he was sweeping those powerful teams, it would have been so much easier if he had the cultivation of spirit disaster. After all, no matter how powerful his fighting power was, there was a limit to how powerful his spiritual energy could get. If he compared spiritual energy from when he was at spiritual energy disaster, it was naturally way inferior to opponents like Ji Xian and Fang Yun, who were powerful spirit disaster experts. My spirit has grown stronger as well. Mu Chen willed in his mind. Spiritual light surged around his head as a similar-looking spirit appeared above his head. The current state of his spirit had clearly undergone a huge transformation. Its small body became even more sparkling and translucent, as if it was made from glass. The hands of his spirit made a seal with a solemn expression, having a sacred appearance. Mu Chen's spirit opened his eyes as he waved his small arm. In an instant, the spiritual energy that existed between this heaven and earth rapidly gathered. The spirit was extremely sensitive towards spiritual energy. Thus, the stronger the spirit, the stronger control and senses one would have towards spiritual energy. Cultivating to this point, the spirit was nearly an essence, as it was no longer illusory in appearance, and the cultivation of their spirit could be considered as a small success. Even if their physical body was destroyed, as long as their spirit managed to escape, they would have a chance of reforming their physical body and be reborn. Naturally, the spirit disaster was the most important turning point in the path of cultivation, as it was bedding a foundation for the sovereign realm. As long as the spirit was sufficiently powerful, only then can one become a true sovereign. There were 3 grades of the spirit disaster, which implied the existence of 3 tribulations. However, they were all preparations for the sovereign realm. Mu Chen's spirit was flickering in the spiritual light as it returned to his body. He stretched his body. Hearing the crackling sound from his body, he involuntarily comfortably breathed out. The sensation of going through levels upon levels of tribulations and becoming stronger was too bizarre. Mu Chen stood up as he looked around. After a brief moment, he asked in doubt, "Where's Luo Li? Isn't she together with you?" "Congratulations, the team lead by you is the numero uno in the point rankings." Wen Qingxian flicked her fingers as an academy plaque flew towards Mu Chen. Mu Chen received it in a little astonishment as he swept his glance over. He was stunned when he saw the numero uno on the point rankings. Rank 1, Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, Captain Mu Chen. 150,000 points. Rank 2, Saint Spiritual Academy, Captain Ji Xian. 140,000 points. This is Luo Li's doing? Mu Chen was stupefied. Yeah. Wen Qingxian made a lovely chuckle as her hand supported her chin, her charming gaze locked on Mu Chen. She defeated Fang Yun and seized half of his points. Thus, she successfully surpassed Ji Xian and replaced the numero uno. Right now, Luo Li is the most dazzling person in the Great Spiritual Academy tournament. Probably even you and Ji Xian are incomparable to her in this factor. As she spoke, she continued speaking with a teasing tone. How is it? Luo Li achieved something that you never managed to accomplish. Are you feeling affected by it? Mu Chen looked at the academy plaque for a brief moment, before smiling. At the very least, I'm not affected by it. With her talents, it was natural for her to be dazzling. I have never requested for her to restrain herself. Perhaps she was well aware of how dazzling she was. Thus, ever since she entered the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, she has been trying her best to restrain herself and quietly stood beside me. However, I hope that she can reveal herself as she pleases at times. When Qingxian looked at Mu Chen, whose gaze was exceptionally gentle at the moment, she felt the deep affection Mu Chen had for Luo Li, and on the spot, she went silent for a brief moment, before saying, she restrained herself out of concern for your feelings. She did not want to bring any unnecessary troubles for you. Mu Chen lightly nodded his head. He raised his head as he looked at the glimpse of the light ray shooting from the tiny crack in the forest, and extended his hand as it passed through the light. A heavy voice, along with unswerving determination and self-confidence, rang out. I know how dazzling is she. Perhaps in the future, there might be an even more powerful figure standing between us. But no matter what, I will never give up. I have promised her that one day, I will become an absolute expert. At that time, no one will be able to obstruct me from holding her hands. The heavy and faint voice spread out in this forest, making Wen Qingxian stunned. She lifted her head up and looked at the slender figure. The handsome youth had sunlight shining on his body, covering him in a layer of light. There wasn't any fear or hesitation in his eyes. He was like a warrior that would blaze a new trail, pacing forth and would neither regret nor hesitate. Absolute expert. When Qingxuan's slender fingers were fiddling with her hair as she muttered to herself. Her gaze was a little complicated. There were too many talented people in this world, but how many of those were able to become an absolute expert, intimidating the entire Great Thousand World? However, the unswerving gaze from the youth before her slightly shook her heart as she became a little stunned. After that, she felt Mu Chen's gaze looking over at her direction and stopped at her face. When Qingxian sobered up as a rarely seen smear of redness surfaced from her charming face. She immediately avoided Mu Chen's gaze as she cast her lips aside. Talk about becoming an absolute expert after you defeat Ji Xian, that fellow isn't that simple. Mu Chen smiled as he nodded. Indeed, he isn't simple. However, it isn't a simple matter for him to defeat me as well. Self-confidence, I like it. When Qingxian gracefully stood up as she chuckled, patting her hand on Mu Chen's shoulders. You like guys as well? Mu Chen said in amazement. However, the instant he spoke those words, he had a bad feeling. Just as expected, when Qingxian that stood before him had her brows narrowed as she grabbed Mu Chen's collar and stuck her ice frost expression over as she gritted her teeth. What did you say? Mu Chen dryly laughed as he drifted his sight away. Your mother, I only dislike being close to guys. If I meet a guy I like, I will naturally follow him obediently. It's not as if I have a problem. Looking at the blushing Wen Qingxian, Mu Chen awkwardly rubbed his nose. He had stepped onto Wen Qingxuan's Achilles heel. Otherwise, how would someone like her to use your mother as a form of addressing herself? Okay, fine, I'm in the wrong. Mu Chen raised up his hand. He gave Wen Qingxian a glance and was a little curious about her earlier words. He was very curious. How charming would such a prideful girl like Wen Qingxian be if she was quiet and sweet when she fell for a guy? HMPH. Wen Qingxian coldly snorted as she calmed down. However, when she realized that she was pulling onto Mu Chen's collar and nearly stuck up to him, she hastily released her grip and pushed him away. However, the redness on her face was much denser and her heartbeat increased. She could only curse at this damnable fellow that broke her calmness. Let's go as well. Mu Chen no longer dared to provoke Wen Qingxian as he suggested with a dry laugh. Wen Qingxian snorted again as she no longer bothered about Mu Chen and flew out first. Mu Chen wryly smiled as he moved as well, appearing in the sky over the forest. Thereafter, he formed seals with his hands and a colossal ring of light spread out from his palm and rapidly expanded. Whoosh! Whoosh! As the green ring of light expanded, the spiked trees in the forest beneath him turned into black rays of light as they flew up into the light halo in his hand. A few minutes later, more than half of this forest was emptied. Seeing the scene, Mu Chen finally stopped as the dark green halo disappeared. He breathed out a long breath as he shifted his gaze towards the northwest direction. A chill circulated in his black pupils. He had a premonition that it will soon be the finals. Let us fight for real this time, Ji Xian. The lush green mountain stood towering on the ground as the mountain range extended to the end of one's sight. In this region, the voices were a little noisy as all sorts of commotions gathered and soared into the sky. There were many teams gathered in this region to rest. Although there wasn't any designated safe region in the Great Spiritual Academy tournament, there was naturally rules and regulations set up in places with people. Taking this resting region, for example, majority of those that came here would lay down their weapons to rest, putting a pause to their battle to prevent enraging everyone. Every corner in this mountain peak was gathered with people talking among themselves. Even the atmosphere in this area was harmonious. At this instant, those teams who were chatting amongst themselves earlier directed their gazes towards a mountain peak not far away. On that peak, there was roughly a group of 10. Amongst that group, there was a slim and elegant figure that attracted most of their eyeballs. It was a girl dressed in a navy blue dress. She possessed a nearly perfectly charming face. Her silvery hair was gorgeous as it looked like a silver river. There wasn't any dust in her crystal-clear pupils that looked fascinating. The girl quietly sat down, even her expression was calm and tranquil, not affected in the slightest from the gazes that were directed at her from all different directions. She gave off an air of beauty and elegance. Within the gazes that were directed at her, every one of them had a smear of charmed emotions in the depths of their eyes. No one wouldn't be charmed by such an outstanding girl. However, despite being intoxicated by her temperament and beauty, it was unexpected that no one dared to approach her. They were all well aware that this girl before them was the numero uno of the point rankings. She was a frightening existence that had defeated Fang Yun and surpassed Ji Xian in the lead. Luo Li. Such a fragile and charming name was already the most dazzling star in the Great Spiritual Academy tournament in just a few days. Some of the teams here had encountered the team led by the girl before them during these few days. However, the outcome was evident. The points that they managed to obtain through their hard work became the spoils of war for her. Out of the ordinary, despite the fact that they lost their points, they weren't too furious about it in their hearts. On the contrary, a breathtaking figure was left behind in their hearts. They were a little ashamed by the thought of it and could only constantly remind themselves of femme fatale. A beauty that could devastate a country. They were well aware of the wide gap between them and that girl. Her beauty and ability was proof of her brilliance in the future. Just as they were in the center of all that attention, Luo Li still kept her eyes closed on the mountain peak as a breath of wind lifted her long hair, dancing along with the wind, emitting a faint fragrance. Luo Li, Ji Xian's team pulled closer to us by another 2,000 points. Shen Songsheng suddenly said behind Luo Li as he looked at the academy plaque. That fella has been tightly chasing after us. Li Xiantong furrowed his brows together. Ever since they surpassed Ji Xian, the latter had been clearly moving in the dark as he worked hard to seize points in an attempt to surpass their rankings. This was precisely why they were so busy these few days. Under Luo Li's leadership, they went around seizing points. However, it was fortunate that after defeating Feng Yun, Luo Li no longer went after those powerful teams and chose to go after those teams that wouldn't exhaust too much of their strength. Although this method was slow in terms of obtaining points, it was clearly a safe method. There wouldn't be another situation similar to Mu Chen, who had swept all the powerful teams beneath rank 8 and experienced a huge exhaustion of his strength. In this series of continuous battles, Shen Sangsheng and Li Xuantong's strengths grew. Using the one drop of sovereign spiritual liquid that was given by Mu Chen, they managed to break through to second-grade spirit disaster. As for Su Xian and Xu Huang, the both of them were able to successfully break through their spirit disaster. Thus, their strength as a team grew to the pinnacle. Right now, regardless of their captain or members, all possessed strength comparable to those powerful pinnacle teams. The issue of having unequal strength in the team was gone. Luo Li opened her eyes at this instant as she took a glance at the Academy plaque. They still occupied the numero uno throne with points of 160,000. Ji Xian stood at second with 153,000 points. The difference between their points was extremely close. Then, let's keep moving. Luo Li stood up, her dress was perfectly outlining her slim waist. Her skin was similar to a jade as it reflected a lustrous light off when the sunlight shone onto her. It was hard for others to shift their gazes off her. Hearing her words, Shen Xiangshen, Li Xiantong, and the other two immediately stood up. After a brief moment of rest, the spiritual energy in their bodies had recovered. In the past few days, they had personally witnessed Luo Li's strength and thoroughly understood how deep this girl that stood before them had hidden her strength. The group stood up as they were prepared to move. Whoosh! However, just when they were about to move, a screeching sound of wind came from the sky far away. Thereafter, two figures rapidly flew over at lightning speed. Luo Li paused her step that she was about to take as she looked at the two figures flying over in the horizon. The whole time, her eyes were tranquil, without any ripples, but at this moment, there was joy surging in her eyes. Everyone in this region saw the abruptly spirited, charming eyes of the girl as they couldn't control their eyes from lighting up. Shortly after, they shifted their gazes over to that direction with two figures approaching. Who was it that could make such a tranquil girl reveal joy from the depths of her heart? Russell. Under the numerous gazes, two streaks of light rapidly appeared in the sky. When the lights dissipated, a male and female figure was revealed with a flash. Mu Chen stood in the sky. His figure was slender with a handsome face. At this moment, he was smiling as he looked at the girl below him with a gentle gaze. Beside him stood Wen Qingxian. Her golden battle armor wrapped around her chest and her fine waist. Underneath her skirt, it was a patch of snow-white skin. Her appearance wasn't any inferior compared to Luo Li, her prideful temperament was being emitted from deep within her bones. Regardless of when it was, that temperament of hers never weakened. It's Mu Chen. Mu Chen's appearance wasn't unfamiliar to the majority of the teens in the Great Spiritual Academy tournament. The moment those teens saw him, they exclaimed out with undisguisable jealousy in their tones. That jealousy was naturally directed at the smile revealed on Luo Li's face after Mu Chen had appeared. That bewitching smile. Mu Chen fell from the sky as he landed beside Luo Li. He looked at the smile hung on the face of the girl as his gaze became even more gentle. He extended his hand out and swept the hair on the girl's forehead as he said in a gentle tone, "You've worked hard. I am also a member of the team, it's my obligation." Luo Li said with a slight smile. "But, since the captain has returned, then you can have the spot of the captain back." Luo Li handed over the academy plaque to Mu Chen as she gave a rare charming blink to him. The scene made the hearts of all those that had their attention directed over to stop. In the past few days when they had encountered Luo Li, she did not have any expression on her face, even when she was facing off against an expert like Fang Yun. But, right now, she was looking so cute before a man which made them grieve and lament. Mu Chen smiled when he heard her words as he extended his hand to grab onto the academy plaque. At the same time, he had grabbed onto Luo Li's hand as well. Having her hand grabbed by Mu Chen, a faint blush appeared on Luo Li's face. She lightly struggled but it was ineffective. Thus, she could only stare at Mu Chen with a little anger. Mu Chen looked around and noticed that there were many gazes that were staring at him. He was a little confused by the gazes. He wasn't aware that he had attracted so much jealousy from his actions. "Let's go, you have worked hard for this rank. I won't let anyone else seize it," Mu Chen said as he looked at Luo Li. Luo Li lightly smiled as she nodded her head. Buzz. However, just when Mu Chen finished his speech, a buzzing noise came from the academy plaque in his hand as a brilliant light was unleashed from it. At the same time, all the academy plaques held by the captains in this region also emitted a brilliant light. Everyone was a little stunned as they lifted their academy plaques. However, when they looked at it, their faces drastically changed. Ji Xian, who was ranked 2 in the point ranking, soared at an astonishing speed. In an instant, they had surpassed Mu Chen with points soaring to a terrifying 200,000 from 150,000 points. Their points increased by over 50,000. How is that possible? Someone exclaimed. They couldn't understand the reason behind the sudden spike in Ji Xian's points because there wasn't any from the top 8 falling out of the point rankings. If there wasn't any team dropping out, that implied that Ji Xian did not defeat a team in the top 8. But how did he get so many points? An earth-shaking commotion covered the horizon as countless startled gazes were directed at Mu Chen. The smile hung on Mu Chen's face slowly disappeared as he narrowed his eyes. But before he spoke, his pupils shrunk again. He saw Ji Xian's name suddenly ignite. Even Luo Li and Wen Qingxuan's faces drastically changed as well. Because they knew the reason for his name to be burning, that meant that Ji Xian and his team had ignited their academy plaque. Ji Xian was intending to start the final battle. Ji Xian had ignited his academy plaque. An uproar exploded in this region. Every team's captains were blankly staring at the academy plaques in their hands. Their eyes were fixed on the flaming Numero Uno ranking as there were all kinds of expressions written on their faces. According to the rules, as long as half of the top 16 ignited their academy plaques, the finals would begin in the Great Spiritual Academy tournament. At that time, those in the top 8 would proceed to the next round. But, generally speaking, only those teams that were confident in their points would ignite their academy plaques. The moment they ignited their academy plaques without the coordination of the other teams, their points would be fixed. That way, they might be easily surpassed by the other teams. If they were careless, they might even drop out of the top 8. Thus, unless they were confident, they would not ignite their academy plaque so easily. Now that Ji Xian had taken the initiative, was he certain that his spot as Numero Uno was unshakable? Many teams were looking amongst themselves. Although they were unaware of how Ji Xian had a sudden surge of 50,000 points, that wasn't sufficient as a guarantee, right? What is Ji Xian doing? The faces of Shen Songsheng and the rest had heavy expressions as they voiced their questions when they saw the scene. Mu Chen narrowed his eyes as he slowly said, "I'm afraid that there will be more follow-up." When Luo Li and Wen Qingxian heard his words, they narrowed their gorgeous eyes as well. They were staring at the academy plaques. Roughly 10 minutes later, the rank 6 Shui Qianhe, Liu Qingyun and Fang Yun's teams turned red as if they were burning on the plaques as well. This region shook again. Even Shui Qianhe, Liu Qingyun and Fang Yun had ignited their academy plaques. Now that there are 4 academy plaques that have ignited, as long as there are 4 more amongst the top 16, the finals will begin. That's some patience from Ji Xian. He was probably waiting for this moment. Hearing the commotion that sounded throughout this wilderness, the faces of Shen Songsheng and the rest turned ugly. It wasn't easy for them to climb up to Numero Uno, and then, all of a sudden, the Numero Uno was taken away from them. Furthermore, they were a little sullen as they had no idea about how Ji Xian suddenly got the 50,000 points. There wasn't much change in the top 16, so, evidently, the 50,000 points did not come from anyone amongst the top 16. The faces of Luo Li and Wen Qingxian grew cold as Mu Chen slowly rubbed his academy plaque. No one knew what he was thinking from the unknown light flickering in his black pupils. Another 2 academy plaques ignited. Another exclamation resounded. Amongst the top 16, another 2 academy plaques lit up as well. Those 2 academy plaques belonged to rank 16 and rank 14. Generally speaking, those teams would not ignite their plaques so easily as it would deny their entry to the finals. But, at this moment, such a scene was displayed before them. Anyone with discerning eyes could tell what was going on. This was definitely the work of Ji Xian. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many teams igniting their academy plaques at the same time. Everyone could tell that Mu Chen was tricked by Ji Xian at such a crucial time. As long as there were 2 more academy plaques lighting up, the finals would start. Furthermore, the only way for Mu Chen and his team to obtain another 50,000 points was to defeat a team in the top 8. However, amongst the top 8, Ji Xian, Shui Qianhe, Liu Qingyun and Fang Yun could no longer increase their points or have their points taken. Thus, his remaining targets could only be Wen Qingxian, Wu Ling, and Wen Busheng. However, those three teams had a good relationship with Mu Chen. If Mu Chen placed his target on one of those three teams, his fame would be in a complete mess. This move from Ji Xian truly was vicious. That bastard. Shen Sungshan clenched his teeth as his voice became filled with anger. Clearly, they had uncovered Ji Xian's vicious plans. He was trying to force Mu Chen into a corner. What should we do now? Li Xuantong's face was dark as he spoke and shifted his sight to Mu Chen and Luo Li at the same time. Luo Li was slightly clenching her fists, but she did not speak. She looked at Mu Chen with a hint of worry in her eyes. However, Mu Chen looked as if he had not heard their words, because he was still staring at his academy plaque. When Qingxian lifted a strand of hair to her ears as she quietly looked at Mu Chen. Thereafter, she extended her hand with an academy plaque flickering with light in her palm. Take the points from our team. Even if we lose half of them, we will still be able to stay within the top 8. Furthermore, these points don't mean much to us as the genuine champion will be born in the finals. Shen Sungshan and the rest blankly stared at Wen Qingxian as they never expected the latter to willingly give half of her points. They exchanged looks as the present was simply too expensive, which they did not dare to receive. Luo Li bit on her rosy lips as well as she looked at Mu Chen. The latter was also in shock as he raised his head, looking at Wen Qingxian. Hey, being indecisive at this time isn't good, right? Wen Qingxian had her brows furrowed as she looked at Mu Chen. Perhaps you might feel that these points aren't too honorable. But isn't it your capability as well for me to willingly give you half of my points? Thus, if you are going to reject me for your so-called pride, I will feel that you are not mature. And I do not like having such friends. Hearing her words, Mu Chen rubbed his nose as he bitterly laughed as a trace of being touched was shown in his eyes. Those around him did not speak as they looked at Mu Chen, waiting for his decision. As long as he nodded his head, he would be able to surpass Ji Xian once again, giving a slap to Ji Xian's face as he reclaimed the numero uno. However, a smear of a smile rose from the youth's handsome face under all the gazes as he lightly shook his head. You? When Qingxian was enraged as she couldn't help stomping her feet on the ground as she furiously looked at Mu Chen. Sorry, I'm not denying your points for my pride. I have still not fallen so low as to take that step yet. Mu Chen said softly. When Qingxian crossed her arms as she tilted her head with a cold expression. At this point in time, what method do you still have? Perhaps, are you going to sweep those powerful teams once again? If Mu Chen showed any slight intentions, those in the top 16 would immediately ignite their academy plaques. Seeing her reaction, Mu Chen helplessly smiled as he replied, I believe I know where Ji Xian got his points from. Luo Li and the rest looked over at his direction, even when Qingxian as well. They used temptations and threatening means to keep a bunch in storage. Mu Chen said lightly as he continued, those in storage could provide Ji Xian with a large sum of points at the last minute. However, he had it deeply concealed this whole time and has never revealed them. The so-called storage was similar to raising livestock, butchering them the moment they were fattened. However, it wasn't flesh that was butchered, but points. Storage? The eyes of Luo Li and the rest changed a little. They never imagined that Ji Xian would resort to such a dishonorable method. It wasn't easy to have storages in the Great Spiritual Academy tournament. There wasn't any meaning to it if it was a small amount and it would easily lead to a rebound as well. The moment hundreds of teams began to fight back, no one could withstand it. The moment there was a large number of casualties, they would have their qualifications in the Great Spiritual Academy tournament stripped from them as well. How did you know about it? When Qingxian questioned in puzzlement. If Ji Xian had resorted to such methods, he should have concealed himself deep enough that he wouldn't reveal it. Because I know him too well. No matter what he does, he would leave a backup plan. Thus, I had someone secretly investigate and, fortunately, there were results of the investigation. Mu Chen replied with a smile. Even if you know that he had resorted to such methods, right now, Shen Sungshan spoke with a helpless voice. With the current situation, it wasn't an easy task to make a comeback. You have also made your preparations, right? Luo Li's crystal eyes were quietly looking at Mu Chen. Pretty much. Mu Chen smiled with a smear of charming confidence. Thereafter, he flicked his fingers as a pillar of spiritual energy soared up to the sky as it emitted an enormous radiance. Everyone in this region was looking at him in astonishment. The atmosphere was still tranquil, but after about 10 minutes, the peace was smashed. Everyone raised their heads as they saw streaks of light in large amounts across the horizon. Whoosh! Whoosh! The streaks of light finally stopped in the sky as hundreds of teams were gathered. Seeing those teams, those that were sharp seemed to have sensed something unusual as astonishment surged from their hearts. Overwhelmed with shock, they looked at Mu Chen. Amongst the teams, a figure stepped out as he looked exceptionally familiar. He was the captain of the Desolate Spiritual Academy that was once rescued by Mu Chen, Lin Ju. Ha ha, Brother Mu, all the teams gathered here were saved by you in the past. We will return the favor we owed you back then. Lin Ju cupped his hands towards Mu Chen as his laughter roared in the sky, luring countless startled gazes onto him. Who could have expected that when Ji Xian had such a backup plan, Mu Chen had one of his own as well? More than 100 teams majestically stood on the sky. Their formation had attracted the attention of everyone in this region, along with unconcealable astonishment in their eyes. Even Shen Sangsheng, Li Xiantong, and the rest of the team, with Luo Li and Wen Qingxian included, were looking at the abrupt appearance of Lin Ju's group with astonishment in their eyes. Clearly, this was out of their expectations as well. What is going on? Wen Qingxian involuntarily asked as she looked at Mu Chen. Ji Xian had his method and so I made my own preparations as well. Mu Chen lightly smiled as he looked at Lin Ju's group and continued, and they are the preparations I have made. You've created a storage as well. Shen Sangsheng spoke out in astonishment. These teams owed me a favor. After that, I contacted Lin Ju to contact the other teams with the hope that they could help me if there were any sudden changes. Mu Chen continued with a soft voice, but, naturally, if Ji Xian did not resort to any dishonorable methods, they also would not show themselves. Shen Sangsheng and the team exchanged looks amongst themselves and couldn't help smacking their lips. They were looking at Mu with odd gazes as these perfect preparations had thoroughly stunned them. Don't look at me with those gazes. I have fought with Ji Xian too many times, so I have an understanding of his methods. In the spiritual road, I was tricked by him once. Although I was willing, I will not be tricked by him the second time. Mu Chen smiled. But even if those teams do owe you a favor, it wouldn't be so simple for them to give their points to you, right? Luo Li's clear pupils glanced at Mu Chen. Although only those in the top 8 would proceed to the next round, while the rest were eliminated, that didn't mean that those points had no use to those teams. If their points were too low in the Great Spiritual Academy tournament, the academy that they represent would be excluded out for the next tournament. Mu Chen nodded his head as he spoke, so I promised them 5 drops of sovereign spiritual liquid per team. Luo Li and Wen Qingxian understood what was going on from Mu Chen's words as they looked at him with peculiar gazes. It turns out that there was an important condition. After all, the sovereign spiritual liquid wasn't an ordinary item at their current cultivation. Thus, it wasn't too surprising that those teams were willing to help Mu Chen for the sovereign spiritual liquid, including the favor they owed to him. How are you going to get so much sovereign spiritual liquid? Luo Li asked in doubt. They hadn't obtained so much sovereign spiritual liquid back when they were at the hidden spiritual courtyard. Could it be that you can unseal the spiritual condensing bowl? Mu Chen nodded as he smiled. Because of the fact that I have grown stronger, I tried using some methods. Although I wasn't able to completely unseal the spiritual condensing bowl, I managed to open a tiny crack. Through that crack, I was able to obtain over 800 drops of sovereign spiritual liquid. Luo Li nodded her head from Mu Chen's answer. No wonder Mu Chen could be so generous, so it turns out that he had obtained a huge amount of sovereign spiritual liquid. That's filthy rich. Shen Sangsheng, Li Xiantong, and the rest smacked their lips. An ordinary person could definitely not give out something like 500 drops of sovereign spiritual liquid so easily. The sovereign spiritual liquid was important to even sovereign experts, not to mention those that were around their levels who had yet to come in contact with sovereign realm. I don't want to do this as well. Mu Chen sighed as he let out a mouthful of air. 500 drops of sovereign spiritual liquid was not a small amount. Even if Mu Chen had the spiritual condensing bowl, he was heart-pained at this decision. But aside from this, he had no other way. He knew that Ji Xian was sly, thus to keep things in check, he had to resort to unusual methods as well. Indeed, you have already made your preparations, seems like I offered a favor for naught. When Qingxuan's slender eyes stared at Mu Chen as she said faintly after understanding what Mu Chen had said as she flung her lips aside. She was still quite worried earlier, but who could have expected that in an instant Mu Chen had already flipped the unfavorable situation around? Although the latter had always maintained a cautious mindset, she was also slightly startled or even admired him. However, her prideful character made her feel unhappy. After all, with her character, it was extremely rare for her to have said those words earlier. But who could have imagined that, in the end, she was the one overthinking the situation? Mu Chen stared at Wen Qingxuan's charming face for a long time, before speaking with an earnest tone, although my methods were in place to keep Ji Xian in check, it isn't too honorable as well. Thus, I have not spoken about it. Furthermore, thanks for that, Qing Xian. Mu Chen's gaze stopped at Wen Qingxuan's face. Seeing that the former was using an earnest gaze as he looked at her, her face was a little red, but she continued to make a strong front as she replied, I'm not that close to you, what are you calling me? You only need to explain these matters to Luo Li, it has nothing to do with me. If it wasn't for you traveling a long distance to rescue me back then, and in addition to my load for Ji Xian, I wouldn't bother myself with your matters. Luo Li pursed her lips as she smiled from the side. Mu Chen also smiled as he knew how prideful Wen Qingxian was, thus he did not speak any further and shifted his gaze to Lin Ju's group. He cupped his hands as he said, Captain Lin Ju, I express my gratitude for this. Ha ha, what are you talking about, Brother Mu? We have all received favor from you and, naturally, we will return the favor you gave us. Lin Ju roared with laughter as he waved his hand. Over 100 other captains from various teams took out their academy plaques as their plaques flickered with light, turning into streaks of light as they flew out. Mu Chen raised the academy plaque in his hand as rays of light surged, absorbing all those lights directed at him. As the lights were absorbed, the academy plaque in Mu Chen's hand glowed with radiance. Along with it, his points were soaring at a terrifying speed. 180,000. 200,000. 230,000. 260,000. After reaching 260,000 points, it finally slowed down and the scarlet points instantly made every team in this region suck in a mouthful of chilled air. The points of Mu Chen's team had flown by nearly 100,000. When Mu Chen's points soared, the team led by Mu Chen went up as well, surpassing Ji Xian and stood firmly at the numero uno. In less than half an hour, the numero uno ranking had changed its owner again. Mu Chen looked at the drastic increase of his points with a faint smile. Thereafter, he cupped his hands towards Lin Ju's group and waved his hand. More than 100 streaks of light flew out from his sleeve towards the direction of Lin Ju's party. Lin Ju's party knew what Mu Chen's action meant as they grabbed a streak of light each with their hands. The streaks of light turned into sparkling and translucent jade bottles. Inside those jade bottles, there were 5 drops of sparkling sovereign spiritual liquid roaming inside, emitting astonishing spiritual energy fluctuations at the same time. Looking at the sovereign spiritual liquids contained within the jade bottle, the eyes of Lin Ju's group were surging with unconcealable excitement. Soon after, all of them deeply cupped their hands at Mu Chen to express their gratitude. Numerous teams in this region were looking at Mu Chen with complicated glances. Who could have imagined that the hopeless situation had flipped around under the smile of that youth? How formidable! A soft sigh resounded. In this sort of situation, no one would criticize Mu Chen's methods. After all, they were well aware that the way Ji Xian obtained his points wasn't honorable as well. All Mu Chen did was giving Ji Xian a taste of his own medicine. Mu Chen and Ji Xian are both monstrous characters. Who knows how intense their battle will be in the finals when they face against each other. On the mountain peak, Mu Chen's gaze fell on Shen Sangsheng and the rest of the party as he solemnly said, the finals will soon begin and I hope that the 2 teams of our Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy can be reorganized to participate the finals with our strongest. We'll heed your instructions. Shen Xiangsheng, Li Xiantong, Xu Huang, He Yao, and the rest nodded their heads with heavy expressions. I plan to reorganize the two teams with Shen Xiangsheng, Li Xiantong, and Su Xian joining my team. Mu Chen looked at He Yao, Zhao Qingshan, and the rest of the group. Shen Xiangsheng, Li Xiantong, and Su Xian were the strongest aside from him and Luo Li. Thus, if they could reorganize their team, it would naturally become a powerful formation. I have no opinions except for one request. He Yao, Zhao Qingshan, Mu Fengyang, and the others exchanged a look as they smiled. They weren't bothered by this matter as they understood the importance of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy's victory. What is it? Defeat Ji Xian for us? He Yao's group said with heavy voices. Leave it to me. Mu Chen smiled as he extended his hand out. Luo Li also extended her slender hand out as she placed it on top of Mu Chen's. Su Xian, Shen Xiangsheng, Li Xiantong followed after as fighting intent blazed in their eyes. The seniors and juniors of our Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy are waiting for us, we can't let them be disappointed. Mu Chen placed his other hand on the academy plaque as he looked at Wen Qingxian. Qingxian, are you ready? Wen Qingxian was also holding onto her academy plaque as she raised her brows at Mu Chen with laughter. If we are unlucky and meet each other in the finals, don't blame me for not having any leniency. Our cooperation ends here. Likewise. Mu Chen laughed as his black pupils surged with spirit. TSSSSSSSS. The academy plaque in Mu Chen's hand turned red as a flame sprouted out, engulfing his academy plaque. At the same time, Wen Qingxian had also ignited hers. Every single team in this region was looking at this scene with complicated expressions. 8 of the top 16 had ignited their academy plaques, meaning this tournament that lasted nearly half a year had finally come to an end. Coming up next would be the decisive battle that everyone would be focused on. Whoosh! When the academy plaques in Mu Chen and Wen Qingxuan's hand lit up, every single academy plaque in this tournament combusted as well, turning into radiant pillars of light as they engulfed the teams within them. Countless pillars of light soared over the horizon. At this instant, fighting intent filled the entire heavens and earth. This episode ends here. Thanks you for watching.